does this land have any restrictive covenants that will stop development? So the best thing is more information means more clearer and more defined advice for you in readiness of the auction. Now, in the legal pack, the most important thing to be aware of is there will be legal restrictions you can't overcome. If you're a cash buyer, then it will always be an at-risk kind of scenario. If you want to proceed, if we say there isn't any information, you can effectively make a calculated risk. The only thing I would say about that is if you are concerned about what the worst case scenario is, talk to your solicitor. Again, if you are going to buy, make sure you go into them and say, first off, these are my intentions, I'm going to let it out. Are there any problems with letting it out? Are there going to be, if I'm going to develop it, are there anything that will stop me developing it? And another thing is, are there any areas of which we are lacking information? The most important thing that I normally tell you is that this is the information that's missing, this is the standard scenario, this is the worst case scenario, and this is normally what will happen in this case. Now, it's not the end of the road if the information isn't ready. By the nature, lots of properties that are sold at an auction are normally done because people want to be effectively quick and they want to get that property on the market and they don't want to miss the auction date. What will normally happen is you can actually ask inquiries before, however once that gavel hits you will have exchanged. So the best thing is if you have any concerns, raise them with the solicitor at the earliest possible opportunity. If there is any information that's missing, make sure that you then go back to your solicitor and say how will this affect my future plans. The likelihood is if there are any onerous conditions, the solicitor will draw that to your attention straight away, but then it's going to be a case of you can go to them and say, I'm not going to proceed, however I am concerned about the fact that I have to contribute an extra £5,000 towards their legal fees. That's a pretty abnormal condition. If you see that, raise it with your solicitor. Don't necessarily say you're not going to proceed, but just take into account when bidding on the property there may be additional costs that you will have to pay if you are successful. The most important thing is, if it looks like it's a trap, raise it with the solicitor, they'll tell you if it's a trap. Does anyone have any questions about legal packs or anything along those lines? No? A standard legal pack will have special conditions, which overrule the standard conditions, searches that are provided by the seller, but again the buyer may be required to pay for. Then also have any documents such as office copy entries, they're the equivalent of the title deeds to the property. If the property is unregistered, you'll have to go through what's known as first registration. That means original deeds will have to be registered at the land registry. Other documents, if it's a leasehold, you might get a management pack, which would be the freeholder, or the leaseholder managing agent will provide with copies of statements of account. This will say if there's any upcoming works. It's especially important if you are buying a leasehold property, what you don't want to do is to bid on the property, complete on it 20 working days time, and then find out that you've now been hit with a £3,000 bill because that's the work they're doing to the roof, and as a leaseholder you now have to contribute. This will all be in the management packs, so when there are items that are missing, go to your solicitor and say, we've noticed that the legal pack isn't complete, so what they can do is they can raise an inquiry. Normally, inquiries are dealt with quite speedily, especially if the seller wants to sell, they'll want to actually make it as marketable as possible. What you don't want to do is to get into the auction and then find out after you've purchased, this is missing, this is why it's missing, and now it's revealed an issue, because at that point, you are contracted to buy the property, and while there's always scope for going to the solicitors on the other side, you're effectively going to waste a lot of time and money trying to argue something when you've already agreed to buy it. Okay, what I'll do now is, if no one's got any questions, anyone? Yeah, go for it.
Limited guarantee title.
Yeah.
That's often comes up. What does that mean?
There's nothing wrong with a limited title guarantee. What normally happens is you'll sell full title if you're being sold by the legal owner and they're in occupation of the property. Now, when it's sold by limited title, it normally means that the actual legal owner has deceased, or it can be that one of the parties is deceased. And so a lot of the standard requirements that we would ask for about has there been flooding at the property, have you had any arguments with any neighbours, what will normally happen is that they will say, well, I'm actually selling as an executor, or I'm selling under a power of attorney. What they'll do is they'll say, I don't actually have the right to actually give those answers. You're meant to do reasonable research. If they've passed away and you found effects in the deceased, then you can say, oh, I found this. But what you don't want to be doing is to be held to the same legal standards as someone who's in occupation of the property. Once you purchase the property, it won't affect the title. The only thing you might want to be aware of is when you look at the office copy entries, if it's a possessory title, it means that it's a slightly lesser standard of quality, and you'll have to wait 14 years before you can upgrade that. But when you see limited title guarantee, it just means it's being sold by someone who isn't in occupation, who isn't a legal owner. Okay. Anyone have any other questions? No? Shall I pass over to the next person, or would you like to? Thank you very much.
you, Richard. Okay, next up we have Colin Horton from Horton's Valuers to talk to us about lease extensions. Get your questions ready.
Hi guys. So I'm a specialist leasehold enfranchisement surveyor. It's somewhat a niche topic, but when it comes to auction, I'm a pretty useful guy to know. Now, when you're buying auction, a lot of time you get cash buyers, and not necessarily mortgage dependent, which is where purchasing a short lease flat can offer you guys a hell of a profit. One of the lots today, Glenhurst Mansions, is a prime example of that. Wonderful short lease. We acquired at a very reasonable price, and potential value once the lease extended is substantial. Our job as valuers is to kind of go there and negotiate you the best possible deal we can to ensure we maximise your profits going forward. But it's vital you do your research prior to auction. Now, we're not the cheapest profession in the world, but we can ultimately save you a lot of money or make you a lot of money when it comes to doing lease extensions. It's not just lease extensions, it's also freehold purchases. So at the moment, leasehold is a bit of a dirty word. People don't really want to be associated with leasehold because of the government consultation on it and onerous ground rent clauses. Again, when it comes to the onerous ground rent clauses, you want to be able to check for the legal packs, stuff like 10-year doubling ground rent. If something is too good to be true, generally it is. Now, going back to the Glenhurst Mansions one that's up today, it's actually one of my clients who's a freeholder for that one, so I can't actually act on that one. But I do know the case well, and I know whoever doesn't acquire that will be acquiring a hell of a property and a hell of a bargain. I've seen some fantastic deals in my time that have come through our desk where people are acquiring short lease flats at 100 grand, doing a lease extension at 20 grand, selling the flats at 100 grand. There's pure profit in there if you buy wisely, use the right people, and just do your due diligence. I got braced the other day, so I can't really talk properly, so do forgive me. So we've done about 3,000 of these now, and I won't go too much into the in-depth of how these things are calculated because I'll be here all day, and it took me about 8 years to learn how to do it all, so I can't condense it into a 3-minute slot. But it's auctions offer you the guys the best opportunity you can to purchase a short lease flat without it's just pure market price. It's real buyers, not tainted by how much they can borrow on their mortgages. It's generally just pure cash. And there's not many mortgage lenders that will lend on short lease properties. You're probably limited to about 20% of the market, if that. Once you get below 70 years, 10%, and after that you're getting very niche mortgage lenders that will lend on that. So we're talking to pure investors that can afford to do this. And there's not a huge amount of leasehold properties in this auction, but there has been in the past and there will be in the future. And from an investor, I always keep an eye on myself, if I can acquire one, then great. I'm not necessarily in a position to have a hell of a load of cash to burn on leasehold properties, but from a valuer's perspective, they really do offer a good amount of profit. Now, things you want to look out for is anything below 90 years on the lease. You want to be, you need to start thinking about potentially extending that lease in the long run. Once you get below 80 years, that's the magic number. Once it falls below 80 years, marriage value kicks in, and what that fundamentally does, it pretty much doubles the premium overnight. And every year you leave it, you're talking about £1,000 per year, based, working on 250 grand flat for argument's sake. So it is a depreciating asset, so you do need to make sure you get that lease extended, and it just ensures you, when you do come to resell your property, you're maximising the value of that property. Now, for developers out there, foreign developers out there, when it comes to kind of setting off your freeholds or granting the most favourable lease terms, gone are the days in 2000, 2012, 2014 where we were whacking on ridiculously high ground rents on flats that maybe worth 100 and 150 grand, putting £300 ground rents on, doubling every 10 years into kind of maximising the investment value of the freehold. We can't do that now, so if you are ever doing, if you are developing or granting leases, do take legal advice on that, but don't ever go above 0.1% of the flat value, so 250 grand flat, £250 ground rent. Probably the best review you can get to maximise the value of your property would be a 10-year RPI, so just increasing by inflation every 10 years. But again, it's something you can take on an ad hoc basis and we look at every single case individually. Now, the topic I'm talking about, it's a pretty dry topic, I appreciate that. But if you do ever need any advice, or just have a little kind of, Carl, what's this worth? I'll give you a rough idea. We do that. We're always happy to help, and unlike most surveyors, I'm relatively Essex is probably the best way to describe it. So I like to think of myself like he talks to me on the man-to-man level, and if we can help, and we work closely with the guys at Bedmans, and we kind of help advise on the costs and stuff. So if you ever do need a hand or need anything, just give us a shout. But yeah, that's it. Any questions?
Can I ask, when you're selling a flat, like
Yeah.
if you're selling, is it worth all the entrance negotiations?
Yes, good question. I should have said that. Always get your Section 42 process started. So Section 42 is when you force a freeholder to grant you a lease extension. If you buy a flat without that in place, you have to wait 2 years, at which point it's going to get more and more expensive. So you serve Section 42 within the 30-day completion period, get that served, and then the benefit gets assigned to the buyer. And or if you can, try and get it all done before we do so. You probably could mention, do help, because the uncertainty can put buyers off. But yeah.
When does it go to the tribunal?
So tribunal.
Yeah.
So we've done about 3,000 cases now, working for contentious landlords, aggressive landlords, and tame landlords, and same for leaseholders. I reckon you're looking at about 20% of cases will make an application. That's just when surveyors I just simply cannot agree. But to make it worthwhile from a leaseholder's perspective, it needs to be at least a £5,000 swing between the premiums to make it worthwhile. Otherwise, surveyor's fees, solicitor's fees, you're looking at £3,000 probably for it yourself. And then that's if you get your best case scenario at tribunal. If the other side win, and recently freeholders have been winning at tribunal, so it's kind of swayed it in the other direction. You have to be really sure that you know what you're doing. I mean, I love going to tribunal. It's the one chance you get to articulate everything you've ever learned. I can't tell my missus what I do, which is bullshit. But your solicitors and your surveyors will always guide you early on if they're worth it. If they're worth their money, they'll guide you early on kind of where they feel the tribunal's going to sit, what they're going to award, and if they feel it's worth going. For us it's great, it's fees, but it's not worth it for you guys a lot of the time. It really isn't, and it's more time just get settled. It goes to a horse trade 9 out of 10 times. Once the surveyor's egos go out the window, it's and I think it's important to remember that, and don't let. There's a lot of freeholders that always want to get that last pound or that last win, and a lot of leaseholders want to do the same thing. They have to get that win, have to finish on our terms. But I always advise, don't ever let your ego get the better of you when it comes to these things. Sometimes just bite the bullet, get something agreed, move on, make your money, and go. Yeah, thanks guys, appreciate it.
Thank you, Colin. Next up, we have Philip Roberts from Ellison Solicitors who's going to talk to us about legal packs for buying a commercial property at auction.
Right, it's great being the third one because Richard's already done everything I had in my speech. I'm now going to be making this up as I go along in part, because there is a big overlap between the residential and the commercial property market, and when you're buying at auction. The good bit from my opinion is that commercial property is a lot more fun, a lot more interesting stuff going on than residential. No offence, Richard, but it's what I enjoy. So why is it done in auction? 2 or 3 reasons really. Certainty. There's a binding contract once the gavel goes down. Everyone knows what's going on, be it the buyer, be it the seller. It's the speed. Once that's gone down, we've got 30 days to complete the transaction. The other reason obviously is to make a bit of money. Hopefully someone will find a bargain, or alternatively if you're selling you want to get a better price for it. Obviously it's nice to make them grow some money as well, but perhaps we won't dwell on that. So really it's how do you get the certainty, how do you get the speed as both a seller and a buyer for commercial property, and really it's how that's done safely. There's 3 key points really on that, and these were touched on before. One is timing. If you're selling, get your packs prepared as early as possible. Your conversation with your solicitor should start as soon as you decide to even consider putting a property in auction. They need time to get things prepared. We do sometimes take holidays. It's selfish of us, I know, but we do go away, so we do need to have a bit of time to get things prepped up. If you're buying, again, you want the solicitor to be ready to review that pack as early as possible. Also, if you're buying, you want to make sure your bank funding is in place as early as possible. That comes to the next bit about doing a transaction safely, speedily and certainly. Is preparation. The reason it all happens at auction in this fantastic 5-minute slot when you make your bid and it's all accepted is a hell of a lot of preparation done. And if you want to ensure that your commercial property is sold, you need to spend a lot of time getting the pack prepared. Worst thing from a solicitor's point of view is getting a half-completed pack. It raises alarm bells with us. So the more that you put into the pack, the better. That means that the standard inquiries that you'll get given by your solicitor need to be answered, need to be considered properly. If there's documents requested, they need to be provided, insurance documents, planning permissions. Absence of those, it makes buyers concerned about a transaction. As Rich was saying, the searches need to be done. They do take time. Local authorities are turning searches around 3 to 4 weeks at the moment. That needs to be factored in. But it's not just getting the search result back. The search will reveal certain things. It will reveal planning permissions. And if there's no good having the search result and a planning permission referred to, we don't have the planning permission. The planning permission may restrict what you can do on the property. So it's lovely buying a property, but if it says you can only use it every Wednesday afternoon for 3 hours, it's no good to anyone. It affects the value. So that's a key point on there. Also title. Title we can get from the land register quickly, but there are still unregistered properties, so the deeds need to be produced and reviewed. And also at this point, it's key for the sellers and for the buyers to make sure that title is reviewed in advance. There will be problems with titles. There will be easements which aren't correctly recorded. There will be restrictions on there. Most of these can be dealt with, and as long as we have the time to deal with it. So if there's an absence of an easement, it may be possible to negotiate an actual easement with the neighbouring owner. It may be possible to get an indemnity insurance policy in place. But again, that all needs to be prepared in advance. And again, from the seller's point of view, it helps get a good sale. From the buyer's point of view, it gives them confidence in bidding on this. So again, something should also always be dealt with on there. The next of the 3 bits to ensure certainty and speed is making sure the whole team involved in the transaction is instructed as early as possible. It's not just a solicitor working on commercial property. You do need to speak to your accountant to make sure that you're doing the transaction in the most tax efficient manner. It may be best for you to buy the property, it may be best for the property brought to the other half, business partner perhaps. It may be best to buy the property in the name of a limited company. That needs to be dealt with before, because again, once that gavel goes down into a binding contract, it may be too late to change things around at that point there. You also need to inspect the property and get your surveyor to inspect the property as well, and that's quite a key matter. There was a case, not an auction purchase, but someone I knew who brought the property without inspecting it. They went up to afterwards to have a look around the place, only to receive a demolition notice from the local authority, and 2 weeks later the property was demolished. So an inspection is really vital on there. Again, evaluation as well. There's no point making a bid if you don't know how much the property's worth on there. On commercial property, there's just a few more bits just to discuss, which are a bit more interesting at the moment. Firstly, energy performance certificates. We've probably all seen these over the last few years on commercial property and residential, and we've all ignored them. I don't think anyone's really given any care about what an EPC rating is. They affect the value. If you find something old, you know it's going to have a low rating. Since April this year, you can't let commercial property with under an E rating. So that's actually having a real hit on the market. So it may be that the property is already let, but when you go to re-let the property in a couple of years after buying it at auction, are you going to be able to do so without doing works? The minimum energy efficiency standards place the obligation to achieve that rating on the landlord. This is not something you can normally charge back to the tenants as a dilapidation. So if you're making a bid for a property, what's the energy performance rating? Do you need to do works in the future? How much are those works going to cost? Really key to have a look at that. The next point, as Trevor started on, it's great to have a walk around the property, look at the boundaries. If you're lazy and you can't be bothered to do that, Google is a great resource, but do try to pop around the property as much as possible. Compare it to the title plan. Most property disputes arise from issues on boundaries. Have a proper look round. Does it accord with what's on the actual title? Are there discrepancies? Raise those before the gavel goes down. The next point is, when reviewing the legal pack, if you're not getting a solicitor to do that, when you're looking at things, just check what's missing from the documentation as well. It's often what you can't see which is the real concern. Why has the pack not got an asbestos survey? Why is that not being provided? Why is the planning permission not being provided? Raise the queries before the auction, not afterwards. Commercial property, a few points to raise. Stamp duty, land tax. it's really worth considering what type of property you're actually buying. There are some times when properties can be classified as a mixed use for stamp duty or non-domestic. That gives a great saving. So even if you've got a residential element, you may be able to classify the transaction as a non-domestic property. That can be a great saving for you. The other way is to do the transaction as a TOGC. That means that even though VAT is chargeable on the purchase price, because you're elected for that and there's a tenant in the property, you won't be paying VAT on the purchase price. There's two savings on that. Firstly, it will save your cash flow. You're not having to pay the VAT out in the first instance. That's great. Also, it saves you on stamp duty land tax. We've got a great system in our country where we actually pay tax on tax. So on our stamp duty, we pay it on top of the VAT price. If you can do it as a TOGC, it will save money. Again, chat to your solicitor as early as possible about that and whether it can be structured that way. There are some great ways to save stamp duty. As I said, the construction as a non-domestic property or a TOGC can save a lot of money. I've had cases where we've saved a couple £100,000 of stamp duty for clients by structuring deals that way. So there are real savings on there. When you buy a commercial property, you're obviously buying a lease. In effect, you've got your tenant in there, hopefully you've got a good covenant. You need to consider that lease really carefully. Whose responsibilities are repaired? Is it all on the tenant? Is it on the landlord with costs recovered? If so, have any costs been recovered? Have there been disputes on that? When you're buying a property and it's subject to a lease, what do the auction terms say about arrears? Do you have to buy the arrears? That's often the case. You will actually have to buy the arrears, give that to the seller, and then afterwards chase the tenant for that. That's fine if you've got a good tenant, but if there's arrears, that's the reason they're not a good tenant. When buying a property subject to a lease, you also want to be careful about alterations carried out to the property. Who's carried out the alterations, the tenant or the landlord? What type of property you need to get back if and when that lease expires and the tenant doesn't renew? If they've turned it into a very bespoke sports bar, is there anyone else who's going to take a sports bar on? Are they required to remove those alterations? They're the type of questions you want to be having with your solicitor when you're reviewing the packs on there. There was always a mention just before the previous speaker about ground rents on residential long leases. It's an incredibly hot issue at the moment. It needs to be considered carefully because there are lots of leases which are defective. Again, it comes back to that preparation point on the sale, on the purchase. Try to get these issues resolved as early as possible. To go from there. Also, when buying commercial leases, do consider if there are any break clauses in the lease for the tenant. It's great that you're buying property with an income at the moment, but if there's a break next year, what are the chances they're going to use it? Is it something which you can speak to the tenant in advance to get an idea about it? Have you looked at the break clause to consider, is it something the tenant can actually use? Is there conditionality attached there which would make it harder for them to use? Likewise, with commercial property, they can be subject to what's called the Landlord and Tenant Act 1954. It gives the tenant a statutory right to ask for a new lease when that one expires. So if you're buying a property with only 2 years left on the lease and you want the tenant out, if it's protected, it won't be as easy as that to actually do. So do look at those little details, chat to your solicitor about that. Crucially, it's about always communicating with your solicitor so that they know what you're intending to do. A lease is a good lease. If it's 54 protected, if you want the tenant to stay. If you're planning on developing it, it's going to cost you money. So always get that communication as soon as possible. They were the points I wanted to discuss today about commercial property. Anyone got any questions at all? Queries?
Things like change of use, is that something that you can know from, like, there's going to be a specific use for the property you're buying, I'm guessing. Is that something you can discuss early on?
Yeah, so the inquiries that you'll raise will confirm what the planning commission of the property has, so that will confirm use. It'll also confirm what the actual use is. And again, it's one of those questions which often isn't actually answered on the inquiries and needs to be looked in more detail. It's no good saying it's got planning permission for a cafe if it's being used as a shop instead. So do have a look at it. Inspecting the properties when you'll find out a lot of the stuff, but making sure you share that information with the solicitor so he knows what you're expecting buying is quite key.
Thank you, Philip. Okay, next up we have Carl Griggs from CPC Finance, who's going to talk to us about mortgage lending options and dispel that myth.
Nick. Right, on Trevor's point, there is a myth, but lenders are still trying to lend, and there's plenty of money around. Every lender is looking for the perfect deal, which is normally a low loan to value, great income, great credit. Problem is they don't all exist. Now, with what everyone's interested in today on the auction side is split into two categories. One is a term facility and one is short-term finance. The term facility is if you're looking for an investment property, residential, buy-to-let or commercial investment. That's done purely by the lenders on the rental affordability, which the government or the FCA have brought in new rental calculations that control the amount of borrowing more so than the actual loan to value set down by the lenders. The smaller number of units, i.e. the individually let or two properties on one title, are now attracting a lower loan advance than earlier this year, since April this year. Before that, the standard was 75%. Now, based on the calculations, you're probably looking for 60-65%, so a bigger cash deposit from the investors, which is why the main market is pushing to multi-let HMOs, mixed use, so that they can make higher rents, which then obviously not gives a better, one, it gives the best cash flow, but two, it also gives a higher loan advance on the rental affordability lending. The other side of it, which is more important to today's sort of business, is the category of short-term finance, which has numerous titles: bridging finance, auction finance, short-term loans, that sort of scenario. It's all the same, in as much as it is the old-fashioned bridging finance. Short-term finance basically buy the property, either to do it up and put it in a habitable position to be let, including the EPCs, which is something that controls a lot of lenders as well at the moment, or to do up, put back on the market and make a profit. Now, it is different to term investment. It's not as cheap, but there are normally no tie-ins, and it's a very competitive market for lenders. From my side, I reckon I'd get one, if not two, new bridging lenders, as they're called, every month. So it's expanded, which means that the only way to attract business is either to increase loan to values or to drop the rates, which is the benefit from the investors. Across the board, you're looking anywhere between 70 and 75% of the purchase. This is separate to development finance. There is a difference between the two. Development finance is if you're going to knock it down, or it's ground only at the moment, and you're going to develop it up. That's a separate, completely criteria, but people do get mixed up with the two. Refurbishment, short-term finance, is based on the asset value only, lent against it, and that's it. Development finance is based on purchasing the asset and then funding out the development as well. So it's two stages to that sort of finance. From the majority of the business that's being done at the moment, it is the short-term finance. And as I say, it's done on a monthly rate in respect of term business is done on an annual rate, so there's a difference there. The rates now are varying between 0.5 and 1% a month, but there's no tie-ins to keep you there, so you're incentivised to do what you say you're going to do and get out. One of the bigger parts of the underwriting of it is the exit. From a lending point of view, from both the broker side and the lender side, you shouldn't be put into a short-term finance if you can't get out of it. Now, the most common exit is selling it. If you're buying a flat, doing it up, or a house, increasing the value, putting an extension on, and then selling it. But a lot of people are now trying to buy single units, commercial units, converting them under permitted development into residential, and then putting them on a term facility because they're multi-let and getting a return. and taking more money out at stage 2 when it's on a term facility. That then, if that is the exit, you need to ensure that it would be approved, it would fit the margins, and it would fit the return for the capital that you're outlaying. Again, that will come down to the application, based on experience, credit, and the rental. So there is stages where valuers are involved. That's at 2 stages: one to give a value now, one to give what gross development value, and more importantly with the rent as well, so that you can have it all pre-agreed. With the short-term finance, and particularly with Devon Gray's issue in the catalogue, you can have the actual finance in place before you come. You have the application in, you can get it surveyed if you want to go to that expense. The downside of that is obviously you get outbid, you've wasted your money on a survey. The other way of doing it is you get the application pre-approved subject to the survey, and then you win your bid, you come out, you ring your broker and you instruct the survey. The advantage of that is obviously you are actually instructing the survey on the actual sold price, whereas in advance you're instructing it on a hopeful valuation figure that you're going to agree. So either way is available, so you can come and bid with finance secured, or alternatively you can actually secure it on assets within your portfolio and use it and come along here as a cash buyer. So there's numerous different options of finance available. Rather than bore you with all the gory details, if you've actually got anything you want to discuss, we're outside. Happy to run over anything that you need to know. Unless anyone's got any questions they want to ask now.
On the, if you do take a short-term loan or bridge, and you've got a plan to rent it out eventually, is there a lender that will do both the term and the?
Yes. There's numerous. There's a handful of lenders now that do the short-term to term. So they agree one.
Application fee.
No, and no cost to switch it over. And as I said, the actual day one survey is the advantage, because it gives you the value now, the expected GDV, and what the lender then does is pre-agree to switch it over to term based on the GDV given by the valuer. And when the valuer goes back, it's not a new survey, it's just a re-inspection to say yes, it's finished to what you expected. So that's sort of the confidence of, you don't have to stay with that lender, but because the short term has got no tie-ins, you can go elsewhere in the market later on, but you've always got the fallback that you've got an exit. Anyone else?
Thank you, Carl. Next up we have Max from the Devon Gray Lettings and Management team, who's going to talk to us about lettings and management.
Hello. It's going to talk about 3 different things within the lettings that's changed over the last few years. Some of you, or hopefully any of you that are residential landlords, should have known about already, but some of them still forget or don't know how to put it into practice. The first one is smoke alarm and carbon monoxide detectors in the property. What that means is you need to have a smoke alarm on every floor of the property that is a living space. So if it's a 2-storey house, you need to have one on the first floor and the ground floor. It doesn't have to necessarily be in a certain room, but it's a minimum of 1, so you may want to put one in the lounge, one in the kitchen. Carbon monoxide detectors, it's recommended that you put them by the boiler, although it's not necessarily in law yet that you have to, it's mandatory. However, if you have a solid fuel, i.e. a log burner or something like that, you do have to have one in working condition there as well. In terms of checking to making sure they're working, it has to be checked on the day the tenancy starts. So if a tenancy is starting today but the tenants aren't moving until tomorrow, you have to have it checked on today's dates. And as well as that, you need to have proof that you've had it checked. This is all part of serving the Section 21. If you want to get rid of your tenants for whatever reason at the end, you need to show proof that you have had that done, and therefore hopefully get them to sign it. It's a simple thing as just putting down the smoke alarm, the floor it's on, and then the tenant's signature should be suffice. If you don't do it, what's the penalty? The penalty is up to £5,000 to not have that done, so it's pretty much quite important to make sure that is done. It came into force back in 2015, so hopefully any properties from now have got those smoke alarms. If not, I'd urge you to do it as soon as possible. The next thing I'd say, we'll go through, I know we've already spoken about it a little bit already on the commercial side, but the EPC regulation that changed 1st of April, exactly the same on the residential side. There was again a penalty for that of £5,000 being non-compliant. If the council, because it's done by the actual local authorities, every time that they come round and see it's not being non-compliant, another £5,000 can be issued. So again, really important that's done. The rating, again, exactly the same, is still E rating or above. There are 9 exemptions that are available. So if, let's say, you have an F rating of a property that's already been rented out for a few years, there is 9 reasons which go onto the government website, and they'll be able to show you of what those are, of which where you might not be exempt, or you may be exempt for this law. It's very unlikely, but you never know, it's worth a try. So it's already in place now. Every new tenancy has to have, you have to have the check to make sure that it's done. By the 1st of April 2020 is when any property, regardless of a new or existing tenancy is in place, will have to have the rating. So bear that in mind. In only a couple of years, you need to make sure that any property you have has already got an E rating. The Deregulation Act, which again came back in 2015, but a lot of people don't do this still, and I see this on a daily basis with landlords, is they've forgotten to do this. It's the third one, Section 21, which changed, which is now the 6A. What you have to do now is you have to give a copy to the tenant of your gas safety or your EPC as part of the new Section 21. Giving them a copy is theoretically good enough, but what you'd want to do really is have a copy for yourself and a copy for the tenants. Get them to sign and date the copy that you've given them to, and hold that on your file. Because last thing you want if going to court is them to come back and say, well, we'll never give you a copy of the EPC, and you'd really want to be able to show quite easily that you've given them a copy. New tenancies commencing from the 1st of 2015. So if a tenancy has started before the 1st of October 2015, you'd still be on the old Section 21, you won't be on the new one. So therefore, just remember as well, if you've had tenants who've been there for a long time, which serving you're doing correctly. Again, you can always come and ask me for help or anything. The templates are all on the government website, so don't panic too much. Lastly, in terms of upcoming things that are going to be happening, which some of you, if you are landlords, would know about, the tenant fee ban. What's actually in place is quite hard to actually get a grip of what it is. I've been to many ALA meetings as well as other seminars to try and work out exactly what's going on. It's gone past the Houses of Parliament and it's now on to the House of Lords. There was only one amendment from the Houses of Parliament, which is the difference between ours and the Scottish tenant fee ban. But that's done, and therefore you can take a holding deposit from a tenant, but it can only be up to the amount of 1 week's rent. So you can't be charging £500 if they rent £600 a month as a holding deposit, and it must be classed as a refundable one as well. So I'll go through a couple of points of which I've highlighted, hopefully will give us a bit more information. So it's believed to come into place hopefully in April 2019. There's been dates for the 26th, but I wouldn't necessarily hold you to that and wait to see what happens. So it's already passed Parliament, it's now in House of Lords, so it's at very much the later stages. Hopefully at the end of this month we should get some more information of what the exact bill is going to be. The maximum of 6 weeks damage deposit. So where you could sometimes, if let's say they've got bad credit or they've got a pet, you could charge 2 months damage deposit and lodge that. That will be changing, and you can only take up to 6 weeks. So that's really important to know as well. The equivalent to 1 week's rent as a holding deposit, it must be down as a refundable holding deposit. It's not, it can't be down as any fee. Quite simply, no fees for moving in or out can be now charged or will be charged to a tenant. So where you could charge referencing, contract fee, pet clauses, checkout fees, anything like that, unfortunately now can't be or won't be able to charge them. Again, if they ever go to the council and it's deemed that you did charge them a fee, it seems like it's a standard amount. £5,000 is the penalty fee again as well. What you can charge, early termination fee. So if a tenant's breaking at the end of the contract a month, 2 months, whatever early, you can charge that, but it must be in the contract what that fee is up front. The changing of names on a tenancy, if you've got two sharers in there and one of them wants to move out, another one wants to move in, you can again charge for that as well. They're very careful in a way that they don't want it. The wording they've put it is it's not too much of a loss to a tenant. So I don't think you'd be getting away with £1,000 for a change of a tenancy. Payment in event of a default. So if the tenant's lost the door keys and you've got to give them another set of keys, you can only charge them an amount that cannot exceed the loss suffered. So you can't be charging them an administration fee plus the loss of the keys as well. So unfortunately it's literally just straight from whichever contractor did the locksmith that done it, that fee there. There's more due later in December from the House of Lords amendments, but apart from that, we're not really. I don't want to go into too much of what could be and what couldn't be because there's nothing yet that's more in place than that. As Trevor said a little bit earlier, the Lettings Department's always got a desk over here, so if you've ever got any questions on anything, or if during the time you're viewing somewhere and want to know is it a good investment, have we got any tenants looking in that area, my cards and all my details are all around Devon and Gray, so feel free to take one of those and ask me today or whenever as well. Any questions? No? Great. Thank you.
Okay, we're all done. Thank you, all of you, for coming. The auction starts at 2 o'clock, so if you're going to hang around or go somewhere and come back, so the auction does start at 2 o'clock. We've got some great lots on offer today. So yeah, hopefully I'll see you back in then. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.